Our lesson from the Old Testament this morning comes to us from Psalm 137. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and there we wept when we remembered Zion. On the willows there we hung up our harps. For there our captors asked us for songs, and our tormentors asked for mirth, saying, "Sing us one of the songs of Zion." How could we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. Let my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth. If I do not remember you, if I do not let Jerusalem above my highest joy. Remember, O Lord, against the Edomites, the day of Jerusalem's fall, how they said, tear it down to its foundations. O daughter Babylon, you devastator. Happy shall be they who pay you back what you have done to us. Happy shall they be who take your little ones and dash them against a rock. May God add a blessing to this reading of the Word. One of the great pleasures of my recent life was the September day, or the August day, I guess it was, when we took Jonah and Nathan to college that first day. It was sad, but it was also good for me. Because when we took them to Worcester, which was my alma mater, it was like dropping fish in a pond. You know, we dropped them into that environment and they swam off and began their life there almost immediately. And they immediately began to make friends and feel like it was their home. And they immediately began to make the best of a really great opportunity. And for me, that was special, not just because I was a parent and wanted my kids to be happy and to do well. But for me, it was like a duo. It was like a healing, because when I went to Worcester back in the fall of 1975, that was not my experience. I had had a wonderful high school experience. I had a group of about 8 or 9 friends, and we did everything together. And we talked about deep, important things, as kids that age will often do, and we had a lot of fun together. And while we weren't entirely always good little boys and girls, we didn't get in a lot of trouble. We just had a great time, and we had deep friendships. It was like a 4-year group date. And it was wonderful, but when I left them and went off to college by myself, I felt totally alienated, because I felt as though both arms and one leg had been cut off. And nothing that I saw there among my fellow freshmen at Worcester that first semester seemed like anything I wanted. It seemed shallow, it seemed stupid, it seemed pointless. And I had the first experience of my life of my first dance with serious clinical depression in that first semester. I felt like a stranger in a strange land, and nothing was familiar. And my heart echoed with that song. How can we sing the songs of Zion in a foreign land? In a foreign land where people don't know the songs. In a foreign land where people don't know the depth of the meaning and the feeling behind those songs. And songs just becomes a metaphor for those things which are deep and important and significant and profound and meaningful for us when we go into a new place where we are unfamiliar. Sometimes we can feel that same sense of alienation, that same sense of being a stranger in a strange land. How can we sing our songs, whether they're musical or something else, amongst a people who can't possibly appreciate them? Sometimes we have that experience when we first get married and we join our spouse's family for holidays and they don't do the things that our family does. How can we sing the songs of Zion in a foreign land? Sometimes it happens when we go off to school. Sometimes it happens when we start a new job and there is no experience in life where you feel stupider than in the first week or two of a new job when everyone else is scurrying around knowing what they're doing and they're working like a well-oiled machine and you're standing there thinking, what do I do next? How do I do this? And you know that. You just did this not too long ago. Yeah. And it's not a thing that I personally have ever been very good at. How do we sing the songs that are special and important to us in a new land? And it's interesting, being a pastor, I have to do this over and over again. One of the reasons my kids are so good at it is because I had made them do it before by moving from one church to another. And gradually I began to get the hang of how do you sing a song, a new song, the old songs in a new place. And when I started being an interim pastor and started doing this like every couple of years, then I really started to get good at it. But it was a learned thing, an acquired taste. Because when we move into a place where we are not familiar, where we go amongst people that don't know our stories and our traditions, we feel cut off. And one of the responses can be, as it was for me that freshman year at college, is anger at these other people for not knowing what I need them to know, for not wanting to do the things I wanted them to want to do, for not being the people I had left behind. And anger, anger is always a response, a natural, normal human response to loss and to fear. While I've gotten better at this whole thing of moving from one community to another, I've been surprised at another manifestation of this sadness of being in a new land and not knowing the rules. And maybe you have experienced this also. It's fairly new to me. It started in the last decade. But I feel as though, increasingly, that the world into which I was born, the world where I learned the rules and the values, that world that seemed after a while to be comfortable and normal to me, increasingly that world is ceasing to exist. The world where I grew up in the 1970s and the 1980s is fading away. And it's being replaced by a world in which my children's generation have grown up. And they feel familiar in it. They feel at home in it. But their turn will come as well. The new foreign land isn't always just a new place with new people. It can also be a new decade or a new half-century. A new place, a new time, a new culture. The culture that we live in now is not the culture that I grew up in. There are points of contact and continuity. But increasingly, I feel like a stranger in a strange land. And I have heard other people talk about this phenomenon. Am I talking nonsense, or do you know what I mean? Yeah. And one of the responses that we can experience is this sense of fear and loss and grief, which, if we're not careful, can also be kind of anger. Do you know the word curmudgeon? Curmudgeon is an older person, usually, who is always annoyed at everything, especially everything new. And as pastor, I have had experience with curmudgeons over the years. And in fact, Carol and I very early in my ministry, we started this list. It's mostly a mental list. We call it the list of old people we want to be like. You know, when we find some person who's older and not a curmudgeon, somebody who's older and yet embraces things that happen that are new, Carol and I always say, I want to be like that. Darlene is on that list. Several others of you are on that list. I want to be like that because I don't want to be a curmudgeon. But it's a struggle because this age in this time is like being in a foreign land. That is a hard psalm to listen to. It's written during the Babylonian exile, when the people of the southern kingdom of Judah were defeated by the Babylonians. The whole top section of their society were carried off. They weren't slaves, they were exiles. They lived together, probably, in a Jewish ghetto of Babylon. They were allowed to continue to worship their God and to carry out business as best they could as a foreign population in the city of Babylon. And yet the best business deals didn't come to them because a lot of those deals were made at the Babylonian temples where they didn't go. And the worship of the temple in Jerusalem, which the Babylonians had destroyed, was famous for its music, for its harps, for its cymbals, for its trumpets. When we read in the Psalms about blow the trumpet in the new moon, make a joyful noise, the worship of Yahweh at the temple was an amazing, glorious, awesome thing. And the songs and the psalms that were sung there were considered to be among the most beautiful in the ancient world. So when they go to Babylon, people are interested to know about these songs, about which they've heard, about this music. Sing us a song, some of them said, many of them probably meaning it not in a mean way. Others taunt them by saying, sing the songs of Zion. And they miss that experience, the awesomeness of that experience. And I love the image. There by Babylon we sat down. It was there by the waters of Babylon that we wept. The grief of loss of their home. It was there by the waters of Babylon that we hung up our harps. Like a boxer hangs up his gloves when he gets too old and has to leave something that he loves behind. It was there by those waters of Babylon that we hung up our harps and stopped singing. Because how can we sing the songs of Zion in a foreign land? And then you can hear the anger that comes right after that. That's the part that makes this psalm hard to hear. And just remember that, in fact, the Jews, as a rule, compared to the other cultures around them, did relatively little bashing of young ones against rocks. Okay? And maybe one of the reasons that they did fairly little of it was that in their psalms, they were able to say, I would really like somebody to dash your babies against a rock. You know, you might not want to actually do that, but if you're really, 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 really angry, it can sort of feel good to say it. And that's what you're hearing in the end of that thing. They are so angry that they're living in a foreign land. They're so angry at all that they have lost. They're so angry that the world they live in isn't the world that they grew up in. That they can say that really nasty, horrible thing. That's how angry human beings can get at the loss of the world that they remember and the world that they knew. And the interesting thing about the psalm is it doesn't answer the question, how do we sing our song in a new and unfamiliar place? How do we move on from our grief and our loss? I think that the answer, though, is that the way that we sing our song in a foreign land, the way we learn to sing our song in a foreign land, the way we discover a new song to sing that evokes the old song in a new world, is to sing. And and singing like music coming out of our mouths, that kind of singing, that's an example of it, but it's not the only kind of singing. Singing could be preaching, singing could be acting, singing could be doing in any number of ways. Singing could be living out the song that is in our hearts to sing in a new place. What is it about the people on the list of old people we want to be like that is so attractive to me and Carol that we want to? It's because these are people who are willing to sing their new song, their old song in a new key. They're willing to sing their song to a different set of instruments. And I don't just mean guitars and drums as opposed to organs and choirs. I mean a different context. They're the people who can find the core of the song their heart has been singing all those years and identify what is the essential meat of it, and then put it out there and allow it to be dressed in whatever shape or color or harmony or instrumentation seems appropriate. They're the people who continue, even though it's hard, even though they are grieving, even though they might be a little angry, are still willing to sing that heart song in a foreign land. And one of the things I guess that I've learned going from community to community over the years is that it is finding the song that's in me and learning to sing it with new people and new harmonies that makes it possible to make the change every couple of years to a new community. Every time I leave a church that I've been at for a year and a half or 2 years or whatever it is, I think there will never be another church like those people. They are so special. They are so fine. And then the first month, maybe at the new place, is always I'm thinking, these people just don't measure up. They're nice enough, but they're just not like those old people. I said that about you when I first got here. Referring back to the people I loved so much at Memorial Presbyterian in Dayton. But I said it about them too when I was thinking back to the people I loved so much in Anderson, about whom I also said it when I was thinking back to the folks I loved so much in Marion, about whom I also said it when I was thinking back about the people that I left at Christ Presbyterian in McCordsville. Every time I made that, I came singing my heart song. And at first, people weren't harmonizing right with my song. And gradually, they began to. Our heart song is the gospel of Jesus Christ, the love that the Creator of the universe had for us from the very beginning of time, as Paul says. It's a thing that we got from our grandparents, our Loises and our Eunices. I love this letter to Timothy and the way that it begins. The mentor writing to his protege and from prison and saying, I give thanks to God for you every time I think about you. He said, I see the faith of your grandmother, Lois, in you. I see the faith of your mother, Eunice, in you. And now I am convinced and I'm confident that that faith has taken root and is growing and speaking in you. And there is a place that God is calling us to take what we learned from previous generations, what we learned from the old land, what we learned by singing the songs of Zion in the temple, and to bring it into the new life. And that's what he is, all the talk about grandma and mom and all the things that you learned. He doesn't let Timothy stay there. He said, you must not be ashamed of the song, the heart song that you have as an individual, the heart song that we have as a Christian community. You must not be ashamed of that. And you must not be so connected to the ways in which that was sung in the past that you can't bring it into the present and into the future. Because just as you needed to hear it from Eunice and Lois, somebody needs to hear it from you. Westminster Presbyterian Church in Munster, Indiana, is that protege. You all need to hear what Paul is saying to Timothy. Because you have lived a 50-year life together in which so many amazing, wonderful things happened, in which Verdine and her predecessors have played amazing music on the organ, in which choirs have sung glorious music, as they continue to do today. And wait till you hear the duet that is coming later. It is amazing. But you have all of that you have experienced. Those are their heart song that you have within you that is singing in a particular way. And yet it's 2013. And not everybody speaks the language that you grew up speaking. Not everyone sings with the harmonies that you grew up harmonizing. And one of the things that you are going to need to do, one of the things that the PNC needs to look for, is somebody who has the skills to lead you in adaptive change. And what adaptive change is taking your real heart song, that which is essential, that which is critical in what you have to say and sing to the world, and to sing it in new ways, with new harmonies, new accompaniment, in ways that can be heard by the people who are actually citizens of this foreign land in which you are now residing. That will take a particular kind of leadership, but it'll take a particular kind of followership as well. Because you can have the best leader in the world, but if you don't follow her anywhere, it doesn't make any difference. How can you sing the songs of Zion in a new land? Well, the only way to learn that is to just keep singing. Find your heart song as a congregation and sing it until the new harmonies and the new rhythms begin to find their place in your heart as well. Keep teaching the same core messages in new ways so that new people can hear what they need to hear from your experience. Thanks be to God.